Placing ads. I've never tried placing ads. I probably should. Although I feel like my category, if I place ads, I'll end up with a lot of crap. So, because toys is very subjective. It's like you're hoping that they sell it at a price that is a bargain for the condition it's in. Which means that if they are not if you wait for them to just give it to you or sell it to you cheap, you probably end up with a lot more rubbish than you do good stuff. So I feel like with my categories, the hunt gets me better stuff than if people brought it to me. I could test it. I could be wrong. But my gut tells me that ads may not help. Although I feel like with yours, Paul, are we talking about like refurbished tech, in which case, like companies are bringing you, a whole bunch of like old tech that they don't know what to do with, and you're kind of giving them the benefit of the recycling thing, so therefore they don't have to feel bad that they're chucking tech away. I think video games, CDs, books, DVDs, those kind of things. Like there's too much stuff there for anybody who isn't a reseller to learn about it. So yeah, it would make sense for people to just kind of go, here, take the lot, just take it and go. I think the other thing with the categories that they like the collectible categories in particular, there's memories, and so people don't give them away as easily as it's okay. It's like I'm not gonna give away my toys, but my parents will give it away if I don't clear it out of their house, because the memories are attached to me, not to them. So I think like even when we go to the thrift, whenever we find like that massive haul of Hot Wheels, my theory was somebody died and the person who it was left to never cared about it when the person was alive, and so now that they're gone, they're like, well, I don't like any of this stuff, so I'm just going to give it away. So yeah, I think it's quite hard to get stuff given to you if you just say, here's an ad for like, and what would you even say? I feel like if you say we find new homes, is that really what you're going to... What do you say in your ads? I'm very curious to know what would you say in your ads. I find the opposite, which is unintuitive, that people who go to the trouble of taking a picture and putting up their own ads want a fair bit, but once that see your own ad are basically on the verge of throwing them away anyways. With placing ads, do you mean on social media or putting up flyers around town? Both. What you're really saying is, here's everybody knows I can go to the Salvation Army, I can go to St. Vincent, go to Vinny's, I can go to the local tip, I can give it to my local library. You're essentially trying to make it obvious for people to give it to you. So if you put up flyers everywhere and say, hey, if you've got any old toys that you don't want to, any old toys you can't be bothered selling, if you have any old games, DVDs that you're looking for a new home, we're happy to take them off your hands, we'll come pick it up. You're just doing it, you're essentially saying, we'll do a service for you. And I've got a friend who does rubbish collection, and that's what he does. He does the rubbish collection, but then he picks up all this stuff that he would just throw away. Like he picked up some Lego sets that were like complete but not fully assembled, and they were just thrown out because people look at their home and they look at a room and they go, I want this corner to be cleared. I don't care what's in it. I haven't been there in 2 to 3 years. Some people in 10 years haven't been to that corner of the house. Quite frankly, if you clear it, I don't care what's there because I've never cared for it for the last 10 years. So if you're giving people a chance to wholesale clear a whole corner of their room, that's a service, but you at least need to know in your categories what ratio of it would be dump and what ratio of it would be resellable. Being a niche seller, I've got a few stores for things to go into anyways. So if I go into anybody's house and I clear out let's say I clear out the kids' room, most of the toys I have a place for it to go. The issue with me comes down to condition. As I said earlier, it comes down to whether it's a sellable condition or not. If I'm going to be picking stuff up for free, but then I have to go and make them into bulk lots so that they can be sold to other parents who are looking just for a cheap bulk lot of toys, not worth my time. But if I'm picking it up for free and I'm selling them individually and taking a small discount, then it's very much worth my time. So yeah, be interesting. I think it's very interesting to test, and you should test it in your area because different suburbs, different demographics throw out different things at different price points, different brands. Everyone's circumstances are different. You can only try. At the end of the day, you give yourself, you're increasing your chances of getting stock. It's worth doing. And getting over all the mental, I guess, barrier of why it wouldn't work, I suppose. And also, I think if it depends, right? If you have a vehicle so I've got a dual cab. If if I were to do that, I would essentially schedule a whole bunch of pickups and just go fill up my truck. So obviously, if you're driving a hatch, you're driving out to pick stuff up, come back, pick stuff up, come back. You might feel inefficient. You might feel like, what's the point if I only get one trip out of it? But if an ad allows you to fill up a whole van, even, that's very worthwhile. If you spend one day picking up a whole van's worth of stock, you come home, you have a dumpster waiting in your driveway that you can just dump stuff that you cannot sell, and you still end up with. So I've got a dumpster, and the JJ Richards dumpsters, they're very cheap. They charge per tip, so it's $30 a fortnight, or 35 now. I think the prices went up. But to be able to bring back a whole ute tray worth of stock, have it reverse it back, dump it in the dumpster straight away without having it lying around to sort later, and whatever that isn't dumped gets photographed almost immediately. If I bring all that stuff back and it were free, and I had to throw half of it away, which is fine, I'm essentially paying $30 to get rid of half of it, and then the rest of it is saleable stock, pure profit. I think it'd be worth it. So that's the potential of, I guess, putting out an ad. And you really have to figure out whether you have the capacity to process all that stock, because there are some resellers, the moment they can have free stock, they jump on it, they accumulate, and then they forget that they still have to photograph it and sort it and fix it and figure out which one goes with what part goes with what part. I remember there was I don't know, might have been Warhammer. Yeah, someone I remember buying Warhammer, right? And they bought Warhammer thinking, oh, it's really cool, there's a huge demand for it. True. And then when they got the Warhammer, they were like, shit, this stuff's really tiny. I have no idea how to identify it. And then we were like, yeah, there's a reason why people who get into Warhammer stay in Warhammer, and people who are trying to sell Warhammer who do not know anything about Warhammer never get very far with Warhammer, because the figurines are so damn small, but they're super detailed and they are worth a lot of money if you know what you're selling. So yeah, that's what we're here for, man. Giving you things to think about, options. Fundamentally, reselling, you can sell anything, you can source anything. Your options are, and that's the best part. That's why I love why I do what I do, because, and I think all of us, if we were to articulate why we love what we do, it's the fact that we are building businesses from literal scratch. People don't understand that about eBay. They think eBay is this place where you throw junk out and don't get top dollar. You can be someone who sees a route between a supply source and a demand, a market that has demand. And if you can connect those two somehow, if you see a connection, eBay lets you make that connection. So people who complain about eBay charging fees, they don't understand that if you want to connect, refurbished parts with people who want to buy those parts, right? Back in the day, you'd have to open up a storefront. And Paul will tell you this. Paul used to have storefronts doing this, and which he has now sold to just do it online, because it's so much easier to just do it online via eBay. Like, you'd have to open a shop, but then the shop has to be in a place with people who actually want to come and get it from you. And then you have to go and promote it in different places, flyers, ads on TV, radio, whatever, maybe billboards, to try and get people, word of mouth, to get people to come to your store to buy the thing that you're selling from your store. Now you just go, I can get items, I'm going to warehouse it at home. eBay lets me ship it anywhere in the world. That's amazing. And then if you have another idea and you have more space at home, you just go and get that stuff, put it at home, and next thing you know, you are a group of businesses. You're essentially like a group of companies, but what is a group of different stores? The restriction that applies where KFC cannot sell beef because the brand says chicken, that doesn't apply to you. You are the KFC in that business model is you, Adam Wild Games, right? If you call yourself Wild Games, no one knows you, no one knows that's your name on eBay. So therefore, you can have a store selling games, and then tomorrow you decide that your wife loves baking, and you can find baking materials for really cheap, and you see a connection from supply to demand, go make another store. Eventually, your eBay business is just this layer cake of different revenue streams that have no sense being together in a traditional business model, but in this business model, in the reselling business model, it makes complete sense. And that to me is the infinite potential. So therefore, it comes down to you choosing in a methodical way what you do first, second, and third, so that you don't flame out. If, for example, you get into a category that takes up all your time, all your effort, all your money, you can't grow. But if you get into a category that's high profit, you've got time to spare, You can ship things. You can ship things in a way that applies to other categories that you can get into later once you build up a bit of a pounds fund. World's your oyster, really. You can just keep going. And next thing you know, you have a warehouse that if anybody walks in, they'll be like, this doesn't make any sense, because you can't brand that business based on the products. The only thing that's consistent is the fact that you see a connection of how that stuff makes it out into the market in exchange for money. So that's a beautiful thing. You are a conduit. Oh. Dude, 3% margin. Damn. That's rough, man. With the overheads as well, that's crazy. It must piss you off, Paul, whenever you see people complain about the fees on eBay on Facebook, because like they just don't get it. Seriously, like the number of people who complain about the fees on eBay, no idea, like completely lacking context. And now that I have a YouTube channel, I have to be very mindful of the things that I say on Facebook. See? Context makes all the difference. So my parents had a partnership with two other families where we ran like a confectionery store, and I remember they bought a franchise because franchise was the model that if you don't know how to run a business, you go buy a franchise, right? And then the franchisor gives you a bunch of locations. You pick the one that you want based on what you believe is the highest potential. In our case, going all the way to Melbourne Central. We live in the southeast. On a train, 45 minutes going into the store just to sell items there. And then after that, during Christmas, whatever, we would be packing hampers at home. We'd be bringing product back home from the storage unit, and then packing hampers in our houses, and then lugging these hampers in on the train. Like, 4 hampers, because 2 of us are going at a time, like 2 each, right? 4 hampers every day over the course of a week to fill up the shelves, and as they sell, bring more hampers in. Like, that was tedious. I wouldn't, if I open up like a brick and mortar store, I would need some real solid walk-in numbers to convince me to even do that. At the moment, just being able to work from home, being able to have the warehouse within the house, to be able to ship whenever, to be able to pick my product, not have anybody tell me I can't use this supplier, that kind of nonsense. eBay is great. eBay is great. The fact that you can start small and build it up gradually. The fact that you can find, like, I don't know any other way for you to sell to tiny pockets of demand globally. Like you think about like how He-Man was a like, obviously Netflix, the show, they resurrected the whole He-Man franchise, but there was a time where if you wanted to buy a He-Man character, you literally only could get it on eBay or on a flea market, because there were all these tiny pockets of 80s, 90s kids who knew about it, and for you to sell it to those pockets, you would not, the numbers don't justify you setting up a shop wherever they are. You just put it on eBay and then they pick it off from eBay. So eBay is the shop that all the tiny pockets of demand globally come together. I don't know any other place that lets you do that. Because every other place, it seems, every other online platform, Depop, Poshmark, your Facebook, Gumtree, they're all very limited locally platforms. Whereas eBay is like, whatever, if it's on the platform, anyone can access it. It's you who doesn't want to sell internationally, not us. And that's amazing. Exactly! I've never been in retail. I don't complain about the fees. It's amazing. The world is my market. Exactly. So to Adam's point, Wild Games, about how putting an ad on Facebook versus flyers, right? Those are choices. You're just given 2 options. eBay does with promoted listings. When people complain about like the additional 3 or 4%, and you go, how dare eBay suggest that I should pay an extra 5%? It's 5% on top of a product. Like, okay, there was a time where if you wanted to promote one method, there's a minimum spend for a minimum duration. eBay have broken that bulk down to the point where you can promote by the item. And even then, it's 5% of whatever that item is worth. So if this beanie is worth $20, you're essentially just paying them what is $1 for them to make decisions where they put your stuff. So you don't even have to make, if someone said to me, it will cost you $1 for every item that you sell, but you don't have to think about where you put it. We will decide and help you put it in places where it's most likely to sell. It might be a Google ad banner. It might be a running banner on the side of Facebook. It might be one of those mid-search results ads on Gumtree. We will decide because we have data to tell us where it's more likely to be seen, clicked, and converted. Great. That's $1. But people complain. They go, oh, another 5%. No, eBay, how dare you? Completely lacking in context. Yeah. I feel like one of my fears actually coming into this whole YouTube thing was that I would alienate people with my stance on eBay, because as far as I'm concerned, in Australia, we don't have any other better option for starting from the ground with one item to scale up to like 1,000, 10,000 items. Obviously, we get to about 10,000 items. Even if you get to about 10,000 items, which we're getting close to, if it's not a replenishable type of item and it's one-offs, eBay is still your only option. If you create your own website and you try and run ads for all these different categories of items, you end up paying more than if you just let eBay do it for you. Bulk broken promoted listing cost by the item. So yeah, I feel like, so my concern was like with my stance on the whole eBay is the best thing and since sliced bread for us. The people will be like, no, you're an eBay fanboy, whatever. But I feel like I've done a pretty good job explaining eBay, and to the point where I think the people who stay on the channel are those that actually want to grow their business and understand how eBay fits. And in a sense, this little echo chamber is quite a productive one, because quite clearly in the chat, all of us agree that it's useful, agree that the fees are reasonable, and agree that without you take eBay out of the equation, we don't know what to do. Like, we don't know where to go. Sorry, we know what to do, but we don't know which order is the best order to get our items sold. So when you think, the Sarah Stenau, who's the head of eBay Australia now, she actually just said, look, you have supply, you have item, and then you have buyer. All you do is you put eBay in between and it happens. That's literally as simple as it gets. So for the fees that they take, completely worth it. Yeah, so aren't other platforms dearer though, like 20%? Well, eBay lets you pick whether you promote or not. I think Etsy doesn't let you pick from memory, or might be wrong. Someone correct me on that. I think there was a platform that you have to pay the promotion fee regardless, and they choose what it is. Poshmark, you have to share closets for you to get any sort of traction. So it's like activity that doesn't really make much sense. And then you have, I think Amazon is closer to 30 if they fulfill it for you. But then with Amazon, I think they drive the prices down. They will also, if you do white label, they will also try and sell your items if the numbers make sense for them to do so. So they will compete with you. eBay won't. And I think for Amazon, if your items sit for too long, they start charging fees and make you take it back. So for those of us who have items that can take like a year or 2 years to turn over because they're quite unique items, eBay is really your only option. That's all I can say. Like, eBay is your only option with global reach. You can go run an auction house. You can go set up a stall at an antique market. All of those things have very, very limited reach. Yeah. And on this pay-as-you-go model as well is insane. Like, it blows my mind the fact that there are people who list on eBay, complain about the fees, and forget about the fact that they don't pay subscription. So they don't actually pay ongoing fees. It's still very much, it's like going to an auction house or going to like an antique market, having a stand that, it's pay-as-you-go, but you still have to pay for the space ongoing, as small as that space may be. You can literally put, like you go to an antique mall, you see all those vertical glass cabinets, you pay a fee for that cabinet to be there, and then after that you have to pay whatever cut it is as the item gets sold. On eBay, you can have essentially 3 bedrooms worth of stock online without a subscription. Fine, you'll pay a higher fee later on, but as we already established, it's only a small difference between the no store fee and the store fee, but no ongoing costs. Insane. Etsy lets you, but it's global. It starts at $1 per day for the entire store. If you earn under 100K, If you hit 100K or so, offsite ads are forced, and they're about 15%, I think, from memory. Yeah, exactly. No insertion fees. So Etsy have fee per listing last 3 months, and then you pay again. I actually think you pay the fee per item sold as well. There you go. There you go. The other thing that does my head in, right, is when people compare platforms, or they go, I'm going to go to this platform or that platform because eBay isn't working. And I go, and they, as if there's no understanding of how the item sells in the first place, and then they just take their item, take it elsewhere, and then if it doesn't, and then I do want to know with these people, if we track them, whether they will actually admit that they cannot sell the item anywhere, and then if they happen to sell the item elsewhere, they will tell the world that they are right and they knew all along that eBay was crap, but they won't be able to actually articulate exactly why the item sold elsewhere compared to eBay, and they will not even acknowledge if they made any changes. They'll just be like, yeah, eBay is crap, I knew it. It's a very confirmation bias, throw spaghetti at the wall, see if it sticks kind of approach. Does my head in? No. And so I will say this on the channel because if you're that kind of person, you generally don't want to change anyways, you generally don't want to learn anyways, you're just wanting to prove that you're right, and you generally won't scale up. So this channel is not for you. I'm sorry. Everybody here seems to understand that the platform is great, learn how to use it well, grow on the platform, and make changes so that you can continue to get better. If you're not in any of those camps, anything that we say will probably offend you. So kind of like a sorry, not sorry moment. And it's almost 2 o'clock, so would I say this during the day? Probably. You guys know that my heart's in the right place, I think. So in short, we've worked out, as Etsy continues to charge you and continues to add to your tab, even if you don't sell, eBay doesn't. Why would you use other platforms with less reach for the same amount of work? Exactly. eBay gives you so much reach. The reach is nuts. The number of, and it's funny, eBay has reach, and there are still buyers on the platform who don't appreciate the reach. I feel like the reach, the lack of appreciation of reach goes both ways. You have sellers who don't appreciate that they can literally sell anything to anybody in the world who has access to eBay, and there are buyers who also don't appreciate that there are people around the world who will happily ship to them. The number of times I get messages from international buyers who say things like, just checking you're okay to send to Thailand. I'm like, why wouldn't I be? International shipping is open, there are no excluded countries, but there's still a sense of, I don't know if you'll ship it to me, so I'm going to ask. Can you imagine if the platform continues to grow and all these buyers and sellers appreciate that it's not a case of, are you comfortable, like, why are you not sending it to me? If the default is, if I buy, they will send to me, so much more sales. So, yeah. You see, look, if you have stuff on Etsy that eBay don't allow, then that's a good reason. I mean, there are things that like I tried to sell inappropriate T-shirts on Etsy at one point, and then they flagged it, and then so now I've got to figure out where to put these T-shirts on. I'm gonna make my own store, do my own social media marketing. That's the thing, right? I'm not sure if Adam's still here, but hi, Sandra. We'll see you in the next live. Yep. That's it. That is it. So the dollar book to the US for $50 profit that wouldn't sell locally. Exactly. And I'm pretty sure Mel does started to do international as well. So cross listing. before we talk about cross listing, why don't we let you tell us why you think cross listing is worth doing? Because there's a small enough room here that we probably can provide feedback on that. I'm gonna go get a container for these chips and then need a toilet break. But yeah, let us know what you think of why you think cross listing is worth doing. I list some new items, maybe 300 on my own website as well as eBay, but actually creates lots more work keeping things synced up. And for real, I'm unimpressed with most of the software. You would think it helps get your items seen by all different types of marketplaces, but at the same time, maybe not as you would have. Maybe not as you would have to track everything. Okay, so it's more work. And unless there's a reason why eBay isn't the best website for it, like if you, for example, right, you think about white label. So you think about Lego sets. Okay, if I'll use this set as an example because this will something like this, right? It's got a model number, it's got a brand, it's got a bunch of descriptors like people. You've got Rapunzel and you've got Flynn Rider and you've got people know that this is Disney Princess. You've got Lego, you got 43187, and if you want, you can even put Disney Friends because it's like the Disney Friends variety of Lego. And if you put it on eBay, someone can find it already with those descriptors. Will you get a much larger market by going elsewhere? Probably not. You'll get a small-ish addition for the extra work. That's the first thing. So to Matilda's point about same amount of work or more for less reach. Unless your eBay is meant to be the ship out business, then you might put it on Facebook for the local business. But then again, if you have to track them both, is it worth selling an item on Facebook and then having to delete it off eBay? Is it worth the cost of the ding in the event that you are out of stock and you don't realize? So that's the first thing. You could always buy multiple. So for me, right, I've got stuff on Facebook and I've got stuff on eBay, but that's because I've got multiples. So for example, if I've got 6 of these sets, I'll have 1 of them on Facebook and I'll have like 5 of them on eBay. So because I just have an idea that that's roughly how it's going to sell, like the split. And then once that split, once the Facebook one sells, I don't bother changing the eBay. I just let the eBay sit because I know it will sell eventually, and I know that the margins are what they are for both those platforms. So if you have enough items, several thousand items, and you kind of know this is local, this is for eBay, eventually you make all your money anyways because you've got other items selling along the way. So you're not trying to chase that quick sell through on everything because you need all that money back. So that's the first thought. Those people who like cross listing, I feel like with the only categories for cross listing that make sense to me is when your items are more visual than they are identifiable by text. So while there's a visual element to a Lego box, I feel like with clothing, like dresses, like stuff that Matilda likes to sell, like dresses, crochet, like art, where you're trying to list on sites that have more of a visual element, like your Poshmark, Depop, like Instagrammy kind of sites, like Facebook, or even Instagram, where people scroll. They may not pick it up today, but tomorrow they might pick it up by scrolling through again, because visually it pops out. Oh, that piece of that dress speaks to me today, but yesterday it didn't. In that kind of situation, I feel that may work better because you're not looking for items with text. You're merely scrolling through a bunch of recommended things for a category of item that the buyer is interested in. So, yeah, I think if you're selling stuff that already have text-based identifiers, eBay is probably all you need. Yeah, that's kind of that. So cross-listing then will not be worth the work. All the apps do is help you to not double sell. So if you're cross-listing, but then you're paying for an app that helps you to not double sell, look, once you master eBay, every other platform just feels like it's not really worth the effort, to be honest. I see they want to work. Some people go through to do Gumtree, Facebook, and avoid eBay at all costs. it's quite entertaining to watch because they're trying so hard to not pay a fee, and they're trying so hard to get reach, and because they're making sales, they think they're doing all right. And then after that, when they find out that somebody is doing 10,000-20,000 in the same category a month, and that's what they do in a year, blows their mind. But because the numbers are so far from what they can do locally, they just think that it's not for me. It's not. I'll just stick with my whatever I do. So that's where you start to get people at the flea market selling you items that you will then put on eBay. So when people look at Matt going to the flea markets, picking up stuff, and people go, and he will tell them, yeah, I'll probably make $50 on top of this for eBay. Those people that he's buying them from don't like to sell on eBay anyways, because as far as they're concerned, the market can't possibly be that big. No one's gonna pay that much money. Yeah, Matt, you take the item and you go wait for your $50 profit. Like, we'll just happily take the $10 on top of what I would pay for it. So, but that's economics, right? There are people who don't acknowledge big markets and they will always do local, and then there are people who acknowledge big markets, and once you do, which if you're one of those people who acknowledges big markets, local stuff just is like whatever. And yeah, so that's my take on cross listing. Yep, spend your time sourcing and listing instead of trying to sort what goes in and out of multiple accounts, multiple platforms. I won't risk my account health with cross listing. That's right. And things do sell twice a lot, especially if it's an uncommon item and somebody wants two. Ooh, yeah, very true. Syncing time is about 10 minutes or longer. Yep. I find if people jump around to different platforms chasing sales, it actually is counterproductive because the seller is no longer focusing on eBay, and thus the sales diminish even further. Yep. So the whole idea of listing regularly comes down to this. If you have regular activity that is, like we're doing listing lives, right? As far as eBay is concerned, for the last few weeks, I've listed every single Thursday night between 50 to 100 listings. And then I also do it on Tuesday nights between 50 to 100 listings. And then I'm also listing like 50 items every other day in between whatever else I'm doing. So that's going to go down. That's going to go down. My reply rates to buyers are going to go down. My sending offers are going to go down if I'm spending time on another platform. It's going to affect my sales. Unless I'm in a category that is so niche that I'm the only one with activity, then I guess it doesn't matter, right? But for most of us starting out, we don't have that privilege. So focusing on one platform definitely is a lot better, and you get a lot more return for that than trying to. I do wonder. It's almost as if eBay goes, I am the best. I know I'm the best, but if you don't believe I'm the best, then fine, go try yourself and figure it out, and then come back later. From experience selling only Facebook and Gumtree and having a few hundred different items, I would never use two platforms again for so many items, only for large pickup only items. For real, like I tried deleting items on Facebook and Gumtree. My gosh, it's tedious. Sometimes they will not refresh. Sometimes the items would delete, but then they will pop back up again because the servers didn't sync up properly. Facebook, right? Sometimes the items, you delete the items on Marketplace, and then some of the posts are still in some of the buy sell swap groups, and you get a message on it like 6 months later going, hey, is this still available? And you go, no, I thought I deleted the listing. And so just a lot of like wasted time. People complain about how eBay, some listings disappear because they're old listings. Like Facebook, it happens too. Like people will message on listings that have sold for a long time. I will message people on listings that I know they had already sold, but then it became available again 3 months later. And then the seller, and yeah, so the point being is all these problems are inherent across all the platforms. Pick one, master one, sell on one. That's as simple as it gets. And the message on Facebook Marketplace, I'd rather poke my eye out with a burn stick. Oh, okay. Adam, the only real benefit, because we've talked about how there's a benefit, but is it worth the trade-off? That's been the theme of like, if you go on Marketplace, Gumtree, is it really worth the trade-off compared to eBay, right? The only time you should go onto Facebook Marketplace, not Gumtree, Marketplace, is if you want feedback. So if you want to be told that your pricing is off, if you want to be told that what you think you have is not what you have, whether legitimately or someone trolling you, or you want to get a feel for your buyer group, Facebook is the place to go. So for me, whenever I start selling any category, I go on Facebook first. I join a whole bunch of I go to the collector groups, the buy sell swap groups, the groups that just brag about the item. and get a feel for who are the buyers in that group, and whether when someone says, oh, if that's what you've got, then I can retire early, like to see whether that's everybody or if that just select few people. And then that feedback is something that you cannot get on eBay, because eBay will give you the TerraPeak stuff, all the sales data, the historical sales data, but they'll never give you the context behind why an item sold at the time of the year that it did. So by putting those two things together, Facebook actually very much informs you about, and the good thing about Facebook, because it's also based on geography, you can technically join a whole bunch of groups in a whole bunch of different countries. So you can join like the action figure group in the States and just pretend you live in Indiana, and then you can join the action figures group in China, maybe not China, China's the wrong country, Malaysia, whatever, right? And you can get a feel for the different countries, like sentiments towards a category of item, and that will inform your decision making, pricing wise and promotion wise. When you go to TerraPeak and you see that this item sold in the UK for this much versus in the US for this much versus in Australia for this much. That's like, someone asked me to do a video on how to make sense on pricing on TerraPeak. I don't know how to show it to you. It's one of those things where you spend enough time in these Facebook groups and you get all the feedback from the comments and the messages and the between the trolling and the legitimate, I'm looking for this item, where can I find it? It was released here only or released there only. You can only get it here or there. Or people saying, go on eBay, that's where you'll get it for, but I expect to pay $300 instead of the $100 that it retailed for. All that information, you just absorb as a sponge. So Facebook, for me, is good for that. If you start selling a category and you don't know whether your pricing is going to be accurate or not, go to Facebook. You'll very quickly figure out what people are willing to pay. Then once you go on eBay and you see the prices that people pay in different countries or even locally, then that will pretty much tell you, all right, if you want to sell on Facebook, here's how discounted it needs to be to move locally versus internationally. In which case, the price is usually always going to be, in my experience, the price on eBay tends to be higher than the local platforms anyways. So therefore, if I'm getting more reach, more dollars, the fee's a no-brainer. But yeah, Facebook's great for that feedback because eBay doesn't give you that. So you put those two things together, you become an expert on your category within a month or two. Awesome. Glad we've given you things to think about, Adam.